students, good morning. In this video, we are going to learn about the French Revolution, the 10th class Nationalism in Europe lesson. We are going to learn about French Revolution. You please open the textbook first page, and in that page, what are you observing? Frederick Soru, a great artist, and he painted and wanted to show France as a socialist democratic country. It means what was the expectation of Frederick Soru that he presented in that picture. And we are going to learn France people wanted to change their country from autocracy and from monarchy into a socialist or a democratic country. And they wanted to build their nation as a strong one. And all these strong nations are to be called as nation states. We are going to learn what is the meaning of a nation state. A nation state is formed with common race, common religion, area, caste, and other common features. And a nation or a country which has a clear-cut geographical borders is called a nation state. So France is also a nation state. The France people also expected to make their country as a nation state. And in this French Revolution, we told you in the last video, France society was called estates, and which comprised first, second, third estates. The clergy and the kings belonged to first estate, whereas the church fathers, popes, officials, church bishops, and landlords belonged to second estate, and whereas the common people belonged to third estate. There was a continuous discrimination was going on by first, second estates on the third estate people. It means the social status of France people was decided not by their education, not by their talent. The social status, social respect was decided by the factor birth. Suppose the people born by rich parents, born by clergy, born by kings' families, born by landlords' families, heavy respect was given to them. Though an intelligent person was born in a common family, their intelligence and their talent was not treated, not to be taken into consideration. That's why we told you the social status of man in France was based on birth factor. Actually, it was a injustice. But many years the same position was continued in France. And the first estate, second estate people, they had all the privileges, and they did not give even the minimum common privileges to the third estate people. Third estate people have no right to vote, they had no land, no privileges, no sufficient employment, no sufficient food for them, and they were treated as serfs, also called slaves. So there was a slavery system in France before 1789 French Revolution. We already told you, from the same dissatisfaction experienced by the people so many years onwards, then they lose their patience and at a time they revolted on the France kings. And we know France was ruled by the kings with autocratic powers, despotism. France was ruled by Louis XIV and then Louis XV and Louis XVI last. Louis XIV was an extravagant. He was a warrior. He had spent a lot of money in continuous wars, and he made the financial position of the France into a bankrupt key. And he realized it in the last time. Then he explained to his successor Louis XV about his mistakes, and he advised him not to do the same mistakes. But during the Louis XV's period, the judiciary department in France got bad name, and all the unlawful ministers, and the total France was made as a corruptive country, bribery country. There was completely injustice in France during the Louis XV's time. But Louis XV did not try to stop, and he used to appoint all his relatives, friends, and his family close members, and he appointed them into the high cadre posts. That's why there was no proper supervision of all the ministers, all the parliamentary members of France by the king. And that's why it was continuously all the immorality, all the partiality chances were taken by the France leaders, and they make all the people into severe troubles. And after Louis XV, Louis XVI came. He was personally good compared to the remaining Louis XV, Louis XIV. But he got married the Princess of Austria called Mary Antoinette, who had much of arrogance. And she removed all the important, efficient ministers, and she appointed all the praising persons. And we can say nothing but it was the total Louis XVI and Louis XV's wife Mary Antoinette, it means queen, both were kept under the hand of flatterers who praised the king, were giving high cadre posts. And even the financial minister, who was a worthy person, Necker was the financial minister, who also was removed by the queen of Louis XVI, Mary Antoinette. And by all these unlawful rule of the France king, the France people vexed at the behavior of Louis XVI. And in back of France revolt, there were number of reasons. One was France society, we called it as estates, and in the estates there was a continuous economical and social exploitation was going on. Common people were not given privileges. People faced under heavy hardship. They suffered lack of jobs, lack of work. And the king Louis XV, Louis XIV or Louis XVI did not take any action, any positive action in order to improve the employment, in order to improve the economy of the France. That's why completely the economical position of France came into bankrupt key. Number 4, in the same time Louis Blanc, one was the famous socialist person. He encouraged the socialist ideas in the minds of the people, and as a result people slowly turned towards monarchy to socialism side, and they wanted to decide. We also wanted to make our country France as a socialist, instead of in place of monarchy, in place of despotism followed by the France leaders. And ultimately all these revolutionary people, peasants, artisans revolted on the Louis XVI. It was previously expected by Louis XVI. That's why he appointed the national guards, nothing but police. And police took lathi charge and fired on the mob of people. And he was escaped from the area. So that France people occupied the France parliament, and they announced France as a republic country, France as a socialist country in 1789. And before that, maximum people were arrested by the king. All these arrested persons were kept in the jail at Bastille Fort. But on July 14th, all the revolutionary persons, many times they met at tennis court, and ultimately they helped to the people who were in jail. Ultimately the prisoners broke open the Bastille Fort on July 14, 1789. That's why still now also every year France is celebrating July 14th as National Day. How August 15th is celebrating by Indians as Independence Day, same way France people celebrating July 14th as a National Day. So ultimately behind the French Revolution, what were the ideals? Equality, liberty, fraternity, justice. So there was no equality given by France government to the people, and there was no liberty, it means no freedom, and no fraternity, it means no brotherhoodness, sisterhoodness. One side the landlords, kings treated the people as slaves. There was no question of brotherhoodness and no justice. It was completely injustice. That's why France people demanded the same four ideals: liberty, equality, fraternity, justice. That's why they fought for all these ideals, and ultimately they removed the king, and ultimately Louis XVI and his wife Mary Antoinette both were caught by the people, and king and queen were hanged by the people. So by this story we are learning, any leader, though he was a king or queen or anyone, definitely should take punishment whenever the king is following the anti-principles in the country. It means any person has to rule under the guidance of under the advice of the people only. Any persons or any kings are behaving arrogantly, and it was possible for them by only a temporary time, and a long time no king or no queen continues their rule to the against of the people. That's why every leader wanted to rule the country according to the advices, according to the necessaries of the people. So okay ma, next video we are going to learn the remaining part of the lesson. Thank you.